Hi. In this section, we're going to talk about the modeling. So in the previous section, we talked about what is FGA and the architecture. We also give a very quick overview on how FGA works in a demo for the end user. In the modeling piece, we're going to talk about how you can actually build the authorization model, and we're going to also have a quick demo for the dashboard of FGA. So let's start. So the first thing when you want to actually use FGA, you first go to dashboard.fga.dev, you create your account, but then there is four steps you need to actually follow. The first step is you need to define your authorization model. That's basically the relationship that you actually need to build. This way you can actually define how your authorization work for your application. And then after you define your authorization model, you start adding data. You start adding some testing data, which is we say assertions. And then after everything works as you want, you start connecting this authorization model or FGA to your application to start using FGA for authorization. So let's start with first one with where how you can define authorization model. So as a flashback, we talked about FGA is actually using a RBAC model. What's RBAC? It's relational based access control. Is instead of defining action on objects, and if you have an authorization to define an action on an object, we define relationship between object. And always the app asks FGA if this user has a relationship to the other object to do a certain function. So normally, if you have an RBAC system, you always ask that question for authorization. Can a user U perform an action E on an object O? So as the example we give during the first session, for the expense report application, your application always asks the authorization model, how can a user, let's say Lee, can user Lee do an action approve on an expense report one? And the answer is usually yes or no. In relational-based access control, where you define everything are objects and have relationship to each other, your application ask FGA, does the user Lee has a relationship to expense report one as an approval? So everything in this model is defined as objects and they do have relationship to each other, right? So how you can actually build this, how you can build the authorization model. We're gonna actually see in a demo, but what I tell my customer is usually start by thinking on the most important feature you want to do authorization on. And once you have this feature, you define the objects that you want to actually define relationship between them, and then you define the relationship. And then after that, you start the testing, and then you can iterate this process to add more object to your authorization model. So as an example to the expense report, so your objects are users, and you have reports, and you have managers. And then after you define those three objects, you can define the relationship with between a manager and an expense report as an approval, and between a normal user and expense report as a submitter. So this is how you can define your authorization model. So let's see how that will work. All right, so this is the demo. If you recall in our demo, we did a demo for a portal management website, sorry, a printer management website, where it was, in our case, was Lexmark. Lexmark sell printers to companies. Companies can use the portal of Lexmark to manage the printers, where an IT manager can assign printer access to certain user to start using them. So in this case, forget about the document piece part. My objects are organizations, users, and printers. Inside the organizations, I have users, which I call them members. I have printers, which I call them org printers. So inside the organization or under organization, you can have multiple org printers and multiple printers. In the printer object, which is referred to here under organization, you have users and admin. A user can use printers, but an admin can use printers and can manage printers. Okay, so this is how you start defining the objects, defining the relationship you want, and you start building it. And this is the language here, you can do it. So you can see I have type of user, and then under printers, I have admin, which is a user. So anytime you put between two brackets, that means you're referring to another object that you already define it. And then you can say, I want to define a permission, which is can manage printer or relationship to say it right for relational-based access control. It's called can manage printer. Can manage printer has to be an admin, which is in the first place, that's a user object. Can use printer can be an admin or a just a normal user. And I also define the user here that basically can be any organization member, yet you can assign it to be a user. Right? So this is how you can build it. So let's see what's the options we do have as a language to build this authorization model. So if I went here, the first thing you can do is direct relationship. It's exactly I was explaining in the previous slide. Different objects and have relationship to them. So you can see here, I have a user. It's not written here. You can say type user, and then under type group, I have members, and those members are actually users. So you can refer to any relationship between two objects inside the object itself. So under the group, I have members, which they are actually user. Under organization, I have admins, which is they are users. Under a folder, the folder has organization that manage those folders, and that's actually referred to the organization object here. So you can actually do direct relationship. The next thing you can do, you can actually assign a user set. So in the previous one, I have one-to-one mapping, an object undefined, and then I add a relationship to the object under another object. I can do a user set. So for example, I have direct relationship here where I define a user group, and under the user group, I have members, which they are users, but under folders, I define viewers, which they can be user or any member of the group assigned to this folder. So if I assign a group to a folder, any member inside that group will be able to be a viewer inside that folder. So we call this user sets. You're not assigning only one object, you assign a group of object to this to another object. All right. The other one is implied relationship. So implied relationship, that's what you're going to actually use to your app to ask if two objects has relationship to each other. So in my demo, I have printers. So I would always, the app always ask FGA, can this user can view printer relationship to this printer? So here you can see I actually define an owner as a user, but then I said can write, which is that's the implied relationship that I would be asking for. It's basically can be an owner or a writer, which is another object here. Okay, so that's usually the relationship that you'll be actually asking through your application can write, and it's always has to start with can write. Like if you didn't write it can write, you're not going to have an error, but that's the syntax that we encourage you to use it. So, you know, this is implied relationship that your application will be asking for. The last thing we can do, tuple the user set, which is basically, that's what is very helpful when you do a nesting relationship. So you can say, for example, for a folder, I can have a can write permission on this folder if I am an owner or a writer, or if I have can write permission on the parent folder. So think about this. If I have two folders, one folder is a parent to another one, and I have to the parent folder write permission. So with this line of code, I'm saying here, if I have a write permission on the parent, I'll have write permission in every child folder here. All right, so those are kind of the tools you use it to create your authorization model. Now, I was mentioning in the first session that you can actually use a RBAC system to build an RBAC model, which is very horizontal. You have roles permissions. So you can see here, I have user as an object, and I have a role as another object, and the role has a relationship to user as assignees. So under role, I define assignees, which they can be just individual user or a group of users. So here I'm saying all the members inside a specific group. And the group is actually another object. And under the group, I have members, which they can be individual user or a nested group to this one. So I can nest groups and the parent groups, I can assign a role that will go to all nested members under that group. All right. The other thing also you can do an ABAC using RBAC, which is attribute access control using a RBAC. So in my use case here, I want to assign access for the user to a document during a certain time. So again, I define an object user, I define an object document, and I define a relationship to the object documents for a viewer, which is a user under a certain condition. And that condition, you can write it here, where in this condition, I actually define that they only can access it during a specific time. So if that condition does not met, that means this user has no relationship to this document, so they cannot access the documents. All right. So back to the model. So I want to just like kind of show you how I built this. And this is a very simple use case. You have organization, you have printers. Organization has members, which they are users, have printers, which they are printers, or printers, which they are a relation to this object. And under the object, you have users and admin, and each one of them have different permissions. And that's exactly the demo that we built and show in the first session. All right, the next step, so you define your authorization model. You want to add your data. In the admin console, as you're going to see in the demo, you can add data, but you're adding it one by one. And I always tell my customer, this is just for testing. If you want to add bulk data, that's where you're going to use the APIs. And inside each API, you can write tulips that basically have a set of data to add it. You can add up to 40 set of data in each API call to actually add this data inside FGA. So you can see here, I'm start adding authorization data where I'm adding a user as a member to this organization and I'm using this API. And we're going to see details how you can use the Auth0 APIs later in the next session. All right. Finally, you can write assertion, which is basically when you add your testing data, you can add assertion to test the data to make sure it works. And we'll see this in the demo. And that's optional because this is just for testing. And finally, after your authorization, your testing data, and your assertion works as you want, you start connecting the FGA to your application. It can be just through APIs or it can be through SDKs. And we have different SDKs here, and I have the link for those SDKs. So based on the language you use, you can use the right SDK you use, or you can just simply call the APIs. All right, so let's jump to the dashboard at FGA. So if you go to dashboard.fga.dev, you can create your environment, and you can see here, the first thing I did is I created my model. So this is the model we discussed during the call. And the nice thing is, every time you change anything in this model, it will be reflected immediately in a preview. So if I come here, for example, under printers, and I remove the can't print permission, so you can see it immediately get reflected inside my view here. So you can see for printers, I have only users. And you can see that the user can use printers and admin can use printer. There is no can manage printer. So I'm going to add the can manage printer now back. And you can see that got added again. So it's really nice to kind of visualize any change you do in your authorization model with this. The next one, I like to always jump to the developer mode because this is shows you everything. Here you can see your authorization data. You can actually go to the preview model, and then here you can start adding testing data. So one of the testing, I build my authorization model. I want to say, I'm going to add a new printer to an organization. And if I want to say all the members of this organization can use that printer, and I'll add a user as a member to this organization, and I'll test if they can use that printer or not. Okay, so let's see how that works. So here I'm going to first add a printer to an organization. So I'm going to add a printer. I'm going to name that printer test printer. And I'm going to add it to organization ABC as an org printer. So it's the first step. The next step, I'm going to add for organization ABC members. So this is kind of like a user set. All the members under this organization, they can have access to printer tests that I just created as user. All right. The last step, I want to add a member to this organization. So I'm going to add a new member, so a user, and I'm going to add myself. And for organization ABC, and I'm going to make myself a member to this organization. So I have three set of data. Myself to the organization as a member, the printer to the organization, and I said every member of this organization can use that printer. So let's now do an assertion to see, since I am a member, can I use the test printer that I just created or not? So if I come here and I'm going to add an assertion, okay, I want to test if user Fadi Hakim can actually use printers or not. So I'm going to add this assertion. And I'm going to also add the manage one because basically I'm only saying all the members can use the printer, but they cannot manage it. So we're going to see how the two works, right? So I added the assertion now. So the first one is I can Fadi Hakim use test printers. And since I'm a member, I should, so I'm going to test this. I'm going to click run and it shows, yes, I can do that. Now, can Fadi Hakim manage? It should be no. So I'm going to run this and it's going to show me no, I cannot do that. Now let's remove this myself from being a member to this organization. So I'm going to remove myself from being a member. Now, if I want to run this again, it should shows no because I'm not a member anymore, so I cannot use that printer. So I'm going to do that one again, and it shows no as I was explaining now. All right. So was just a quick demonstration for how you can use the dashboard, how you can add the demo data, and how you can do assertion. So in the next session, we're going to talk about how you can use APIs, because that's basically when you add data, check on data, you're basically going to be using either APIs or SDK. All right, thank you.